7 times, 7 goodbyes, 7 attempts at love, each ending in a familiar sting of heartbreak. It's a strange thing, carrying the weight of those failed relationships, like mismatched baggage from a trip never finished. Each one a reminder of what was, what could have been, and what ultimately fell apart.
We've all been there, haven't we? Standing at the baggage claim of our lives, sifting through the emotional debris of relationships past, wondering where it all went wrong, wondering what we could have done differently, wondering if we're destined to repeat the same mistakes again and again.
It's easy to feel alone in those moments, to believe that we're the only ones who keep tripping over the same hurdles in the obstacle course of love. But the truth is, heartbreak is a universal language. It transcends age, culture, and background. It's a shared experience that connects us all. But here's the thing about heartbreak. It's not just about the pain. It's about the lessons learned, the growth that emerges from the wreckage. It's about picking ourselves up, dusting ourselves off, and finding the courage to love again. This time with more wisdom and self-awareness.
Why share these stories of heartbreak? Why revisit the ghosts of relationships past? Because in the telling, we heal. We offer a hand to those who are struggling on a similar path. We break down the walls of isolation and shame that often surround relationship failures.
By sharing our experiences, we transform our heartbreak into something meaningful. We offer hope to those who feel lost and alone. We create a space for empathy, understanding, and connection. This is the story of my 7 goodbyes. It's messy, it's honest, and at times it's downright painful. But it's also a story of self-discovery, resilience, and the enduring power of hope. It's a story about learning to love myself so that one day, I might love and be loved in a way that truly lasts. He was tall, with kind eyes and a smile that could light up a room. We were young, barely out of high school, and I was instantly smitten. It was a classic case of first love, intense, all-consuming, and utterly intoxicating. Looking back, it's easy to see how naive I was. I mistook infatuation for love, passion for compatibility. We were caught up in the whirlwind of newness, blind to the cracks that were already beginning to show. The breakup was messy, a tangled mess of tears, accusations, and broken promises. It was my first real heartbreak, and it left me reeling. I felt lost, broken, and utterly unsure of myself. It took time, but I eventually emerged from the wreckage of that first love with a valuable lesson learned. Love, real love, takes time to grow. It can't be rushed or forced. It requires patience, understanding, and a willingness to see beyond the surface. The months that followed my first breakup were a blur of fleeting connections and ill-advised attempts at filling the void. I sought solace in the arms of others, mistaking temporary comfort for genuine connection. There was the musician, brooding and enigmatic, who promised to heal my broken heart with his soulful melodies. Then came the athlete, charming and confident, who swept me off my feet with grand gestures and empty promises. Each new relationship, however, followed a similar pattern. The initial spark of attraction would quickly fizzle out, leaving behind a trail of disappointment and a growing sense of self-doubt. It was as if I was stuck in a perpetual cycle of heartbreak, seeking validation and love in all the wrong places. I was so afraid of being alone, of confronting the pain of my past, that I kept repeating the same mistakes, hoping for a different outcome. One of the hardest lessons I had to learn was the difference between the intoxicating rush of the honeymoon phase and the quiet comfort of genuine love. I was a sucker for grand gestures, for whirlwind romances that swept me off my feet. There was something intoxicating about the initial stages of a relationship. The butterflies in your stomach, the late-night conversations that stretched into the early hours of the morning, the thrill of discovering someone new. But I was so caught up in the excitement of it all that I often overlooked red flags, ignored my intuition, and settled for surface-level connections. I mistook passion for compatibility, chemistry for true love. It was an exhilarating yet ultimately unsustainable way to approach relationships. The honeymoon phase, as I learned the hard way, always fades. And when it does, you're left to face the reality of the connection you've built or failed to build. Looking back, I can see that a deep-seated fear of loneliness fueled many of my early relationship choices. I craved the security and comfort of a partner, the feeling of being chosen, of being loved. This desire for connection, however, often blinded me to potential problems. I ignored warning signs, rationalized bad behavior, and convinced myself that things would eventually get better. I dated a man who was emotionally unavailable, convincing myself that my love could fix him. I pursued a relationship with someone who was still hung up on his ex, believing that I could win him over with my charm and affection. Each time I clung to the hope of a happy ending, ignoring the voice inside that whispered words of caution. I was so desperate to avoid being alone that I settled for relationships that were ultimately unfulfilling and, in some cases, even harmful. Each failed relationship, each goodbye, left its mark. Like tiny cracks in a once pristine wall, they began to chip away at my ability to trust, to be vulnerable, to let someone truly see me. Fear, that sly architect, began to construct walls around my heart. Brick by brick, I built a fortress designed to keep me safe from the pain of further heartbreak. But those very walls meant to protect me also kept love out. I became guarded, hesitant to reveal my true self. I held back my emotions, fearing that expressing them would make me appear weak or needy. I kept my heart locked away, convinced that vulnerability was a liability, not a strength. The irony, of course, was that in attempting to shield myself from pain, I was also preventing myself from experiencing the full spectrum of human connection. I was denying myself the very intimacy I so desperately craved. Somewhere along the way, I learned to speak the language of silence. I became a master at hiding my true feelings, at burying my needs beneath layers of politeness and unspoken expectations. I assumed that my partners should just know what I was thinking or feeling, that true love meant never having to ask for what I wanted. This, of course, was a recipe for disaster. Unspoken resentments festered, misunderstandings multiplied. What started as minor communication breakdowns escalated into major relationship earthquakes. I blamed my partners for not understanding me, for not being able to read my mind. But the truth was, I was equally guilty of failing to communicate my needs clearly and respectfully. I had to learn that love doesn't come with a telepathic connection. Healthy relationships require open, honest, and vulnerable communication, even when it's uncomfortable. Deep down, beneath the surface of my confident exterior, lurked a well of insecurity. I carried the weight of past hurts, the echoes of critical voices, the fear of not being good enough. These insecurities, often unacknowledged and unexamined, seeped into my relationships, poisoning the well of love with doubt and suspicion. I became overly sensitive to any perceived slight, any hint of criticism. I sought constant reassurance, needing my partners to constantly validate my worth. I compared myself to others, convinced that I was somehow lacking. This dance of insecurity created a vicious cycle. The more insecure I felt, the more demanding and clingy I became. This, in turn, pushed my partners away, confirming my deepest fears of not being worthy of love. I spent years seeking validation in the eyes of others, hoping that someone else's love could somehow fill the void within me. I craved external approval, mistaking it for self-worth. I chased after partners who I thought could make me feel complete, who could somehow magically erase my insecurities and heal my past wounds. But true validation, I eventually realized, can only come from within. No amount of external praise or affection can compensate for a lack of self-love. Each time a relationship ended, I was left feeling emptier than before. The validation I had so desperately sought proved to be fleeting and superficial. It was only when I began to focus on my own healing, on cultivating self-compassion and acceptance, that I started to experience a deeper sense of worthiness. After the seventh goodbye, the seventh attempt at love turned to ashes. Something shifted within me. The familiar sting of heartbreak was sharper, the exhaustion deeper. I was tired of the cycle, weary of the emotional wreckage. For the first time, I chose a different path. I chose myself. I turned away from the temptation of quick rebounds, the allure of distractions. I embraced the quiet solitude of my own company. There was a strange comfort in the silence. It allowed me to hear my own thoughts again, to untangle the knots of my own heart. I began journaling, pouring out my pain, my confusion, my longing onto the page. The words flowed freely, a torrent of emotions finally finding release. With each sentence, each tear-stained entry, I felt a weight lifting, a sense of clarity emerging from the fog of heartbreak. Solitude became my mirror. I began to look inward, to confront the reflections staring back at me with unflinching honesty. It wasn't always a pleasant experience. I saw my patterns, my insecurities, the ways I had sabotaged myself in the name of love. I saw the walls I had built, the masks I had worn, the defenses I had erected to protect myself from getting hurt. It was painful confronting those less than flattering aspects of myself, but it was also incredibly liberating. For the first time, I was willing to take responsibility for my role in my relationships, to acknowledge my own contributions to their demise. I realized that I had spent years seeking love from a place of lack, believing that someone else could complete me, fix me, make me whole. It was an impossible expectation to place on another human being. As I delved deeper into the work of self-discovery, my understanding of love began to shift. The fairy tales I had grown up believing, the romantic comedies that had shaped my expectations, began to lose their power over me. I realized that love wasn't about finding someone who could save me, but about choosing to save myself. It wasn't about losing myself in another person, but about showing up as my most authentic self, flaws and all. I began to crave a different kind of love, one that was grounded in mutual respect, open communication, and a shared commitment to growth. A love that celebrated our individuality while also nurturing our connection. I wanted a love that was both passionate and peaceful, exciting and comforting, challenging and supportive. A love that felt like coming home to myself in the arms of another. One of the most profound lessons I learned from my 7 failed relationships was the power of letting go. Letting go of the past hurts, the should-haves and could-haves, the what-ifs that haunted my thoughts. I realized that holding on to resentment, anger, and blame was only keeping me stuck in the cycle of pain. It was preventing me from moving forward, from opening myself up to new possibilities. So I made a conscious decision to forgive myself for the mistakes I had made, for the lessons I had to learn the hard way, and to forgive those who had hurt me, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to be free. Letting go didn't mean forgetting or condoning the past. It meant releasing its hold on my present and future. It meant choosing to focus on healing, on growth, on the possibility of a love that was truly worthy of my heart. 7 failed relationships, 7 painful goodbyes. I viewed those experiences as failures, as evidence that I was unworthy of love. But heartbreak has been my greatest teacher. Each relationship, each heartbreak, peeled back another layer, revealing a deeper truth about myself. It was a painful, messy process, like excavating a precious artifact. But just as a geode reveals its hidden beauty, so too did my heart begin to shimmer with strength and resilience. I learned to sit with my pain, to listen to its whispers, to find the lessons within the wreckage. I discovered the importance of setting boundaries, of honoring my own needs and desires. I learned to communicate more authentically, to express my vulnerability without fear of rejection. And most importantly, I began to cultivate a deep love for myself, flaws and all. It would be easy to allow the weight of those 7 goodbyes to crush my spirit, to convince me that love is simply not in the cards for me. But I refuse to let fear be my guide. I choose to believe that love is still possible, that I am worthy of experiencing a love that is both deep and enduring. Yes, I have been hurt. Yes, I have made mistakes. But each heartbreak has also made me braver, wiser, more compassionate. I have learned to navigate the complexities of love with a greater sense of self-awareness and a willingness to be vulnerable, even when it scares me. The truth is, love is a risky business. It requires us to open ourselves up to the possibility of pain, to trust that even if things don't work out, we will be okay. It takes courage to love again after heartbreak, to step back into the arena with a heart that has been bruised but not broken. But I believe that the rewards are worth the risk. Because to love and be loved in return is one of the greatest joys life has to offer. It is a gift, a privilege, and a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. I no longer search for love with the same frantic energy that once propelled me from one relationship to the next. I have found a different kind of peace, a deep sense of contentment that comes from knowing that I am enough. I savor the present moment, appreciating the love that already exists in my life, family, friends, and most importantly, the love I have for myself. I trust that when the time is right, love will find me again, aligned and authentic. I still believe in love, grounded in self-acceptance and mutual respect. It celebrates our imperfections and honors our boundaries. This is the love I am moving towards with an open heart and a hopeful spirit.